Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. For today's valued viewer request, and we've got a really good one, I've been desperately wanting someone to ask this, and we've got Paul Hughes. Grim Reapers do a video on the Israeli stealing of the Mirage plans, and just so happens this has coincided with me finishing the book by James Foley/Follett, Mirage, and you can see a picture of a Mirage 3? 5 in there, it doesn't matter about the picture. This is about the true story. This is a novel, so technically it's dramatized, but it is the true story of how Israeli spies, after the 6-day war from 1967 to 1969, literally stole, as in physically took with their hands, the top secret guarded plans for the Mirage 5 fighter bomber from the French, essentially, and then made their own plane. It ended up becoming the Kfir, and we can't really do this video without talking about the Kfir because it has a special place in my heart, along with some of the classics like the English Electric Lightning and the MiG-21 and blah blah blah. So we'll start with probably just generic information about the Israeli Kfir and where it came from. The Israeli Aircraft Industries, which is the Israeli company that was set up to make these planes of the stolen plans, is an Israeli all-weather multi-role combat aircraft based on the French Dassault Mirage 5 with Israeli avionics and an Israeli-built version of the General Electric J79 turbojet engine, and we'll come talk about the engine as well. The project that would ultimately give birth to the Kfir can be traced back to Israeli need to adapting the Dassault Mirage 3C to a specific requirements of the Israeli Air Force. Before we go any further, we do have a Kfir coming into DCS, whether it's a paid or whether it's a free mod, I'm not sure yet, but it's high fidelity and looks absolutely amazing, but I'm not allowed to say any more than that. The all-weather Delta Wing Mirage 3CJ was the first Mach 2 aircraft acquired by Israel from the then close ally France, and constituted the backbone of the IAF during most of the 1960s until the arrival of the Douglas A4 Skyhawk. Lots of politics going on at this point. Big axes: France, Israel, obviously the whole Arab region, and USA. And most importantly, the McDonnell Douglas F4 Phantom II. By the end of the decade, while the Mirage 3 CJ proved to be extremely effective in the air superiority role, its relative short range of action imposed some limitations on its usefulness as a ground attack aircraft. Thus, in the mid-1960s, at the request of Israel, Dassault Aviation began developing the Mirage 5. Now, let's go back in history a bit. There was a very tightly knit relationship between Israel and Dassault, or France at the time. We would have Israeli fighter pilots at Dassault Aviation in France to help actually develop the Mirage. They drove the Mirage because they were the guys that were using the Mirage in combat, and hence the Mirage 5, like I said, came out of essentially the 6-day war and the requirements for an improved Mirage 3, a fair weather ground attack version of the Mirage 3. Following the instructions made by the Israelis, advanced avionics located behind the cockpit were removed, allowing the aircraft to increase its fuel carrying capacity while reducing maintenance costs and making it more usable. By 1968, Dassault had finished production of the 50 Mirage 5Js paid for by Israel, but an arms embargo imposed upon Israel by the French government in 1967 prevented deliveries from taking place. Now, I don't know the history behind this, but de Gaulle, the president of France at the time in 67, presumably this is because of the 6-day war, I don't really know, said, okay, I'm no longer going to allow French-built Mirages to be sent to Israel, even though, note, that Israel had paid for them. Also said that we're not going to allow you to have any more boats, but you can have the 5 corvettes that we are making for you at the time, patrol missile boats, because in this time of history, Israel had just been started to get attacked by Egyptian guided missile boats. It's the first time in history, I believe, that guided missile boats had fired upon anyone, and they'd been fired upon by Egypt. So Israel was defending itself with what it would hope it would be the new Mirage 5s, and what it would hope would be the 5 times guided missile corvettes built in France. The Israelis replied by producing an unlicensed copy of the Mirage 5, the Nesher, with technical specifications for both the airframe and the engine obtained by Israeli spies. Some sources claim Israeli received 50 Mirage 5s in crate from the French Air Force ADA, while the ADA took over the 50 aircraft originally intended for Israel. So Israeli spies, including a Mirage 3 ex-combat pilot, infiltrated not France, not Dassault, but a company in Switzerland that were making Mirage 5s under license, presumably for the Swiss Air Force, infiltrated it, got friendly with their engineers, and managed to, over the course of 2 years, steal the plans for the Mirage 5. Now, I think the Israelis did actually have some Mirage 5s at the moment, so you have to say, okay, well, why didn't they just reverse engineer the Mirage 5 that they had? And the answer is you can't. You can't actually, despite what hearsay may tell you, you can't reverse engineer an airplane, because it's not just copying the shape of parts. You have to know how a metal has to be treated, how it has to be heat treated. Everything like that has to be known, the tolerances, and this stuff you just can't measure. So you have to get the plans. So they stole the plans over 2 years, and because this is before computers essentially, so the plans were all on paper, a lot of them life-size plans. So a lot of these plans are as big as a building in paper, as ridiculous as it sounds, but you need jigs that big. And it equated to over 3 tons of paper. So they stole 3 tons of paper. And they got it out on the 5 Corvettes, which they stole, because at that point, de Gaulle wouldn't let the Israelis take the 5 Corvettes. They let them finish them, but not actually take them, the way that history changed over the next 2 years. So Israel ended up stealing, as in literally stealing, the 5 Corvettes and running 3,000 miles to Israel. On that, they had the plans for the Mirage, and then the rest is history. I really suggest you go and read the book. Design. The Kfir program originated in the quest to develop a more capable version of the IAA Nesher, which was already in serious production. After General de Gaulle embargoed the sale of arms to Israel, the IAF feared that it might lose qualitative superiority over its adversaries in the future, which were receiving increasingly advanced Soviet aircraft. The main and most advanced type of aircraft available to the IAF was the Mirage, but severe problem developed due to the Mirage fleet's depletion due to the attrition over the 6-day war. Lots of them got blown up. Domestic production would avoid the problem of embargo completely. Efforts to reverse engineer and reproduce components of the Mirage were aided by Israeli espionage efforts to obtain technical assistance and blueprints from third-party Mirage operators, and that's the Swiss connection. 2 power plants were initially selected for trials. The General Electric J79 turbojet from the Phantom, from the Starfighter, and a Rolls-Royce Spey turbofan. One thing that really confused me at this point is that as well as stealing the Mirage plans, they also stole the Snecma ATAR engine for the Mirage 5. So they had everything to build an ATAR engine. So I wonder why they went to General Electric rather than using the ATAR. In the end, the J79 American was selected, not least because it was the same engine used on the McDonnell Douglas F4 Phantom II, which the Israelis began to acquire from the United States in 1969. Now you have to remember that all of this stealing and stuff was done before they could get the F4, and they didn't think they were going to get the F4. Along with license to produce the J79 themselves, the J79 was clearly superior to the original French ATAR, oh there we go, providing a drive thrust of 11,000 pounds and 19,000 pounds with afterburner. I think the ATAR was about 16,000 pounds with afterburner, and probably worse fuel consumption. In order to accommodate the new power plant on the Mirage's 3's airframe, and to deliver the added cooling requirement for the J79, the aircraft's rear fuselage was slightly shortened and widened, its air intakes were enlarged, and a large air inlet was installed at the base of the vertical stabilizer, which gives the Kfir its real interesting shape there. So as to supply the extra cooling needed for the afterburner, the engine itself was encased in a titanium heat shield. A 2-seat Mirage 3 BJ fitted with a GE79 made its first flight in September 1970, and soon followed by a re-engineered Nesher, which flew in September 1971. An improved prototype of the aircraft with the name Ram B, means thunder, and Ram A was the Nesher, made its first flight in 1973. It had extensively revised cockpit, a strengthened landing gear, and considerable amount of its Israeli-built avionics. The internal fuel tanks were slightly rearranged. Their total capacity had been increased to 2,700 litres. There were unconfirmed reports that the number of original Mirage 3Cs re-engined with the J79 and given the name Barak lightning, took part in the Yom Kippur War of 1973. We do need to do some more study of the Yom Kippur War. But some sources point out that there is no evidence that these aircraft ever existed. How interesting. The Israelis are massively secretive. So we're going to do a bit of a reenactment. We are, as ever, going to bend history massively because at the end of the day it's a bit of fun. What we're going to do is find that the Israelis have stolen 5 times guided missiles corvettes, which we believe is true to history. On board, they have all of the Mirage plans. No, that didn't happen in real life. They had some of the Mirage plans because it was much more complicated than just sticking them on one boat. That, I believe, is historically accurate as well. They're going from Cherbourg port in France, in Normandy, which is also accurate, I'm pretty sure. And they're being chased out by this horror, by de Gaulle. De Gaulle's got on this guided missile frigate here. He's at the helm and he's chasing the corvettes out. Now, I'm pretty sure that is not accurate. I've got the blood red Mirage because I'm awesome. RC's got the boring one. Okay, I'll say 3, 2, 1, go. It's on the nose. Cherbourg's on the nose. Okay, they've set this little plane up. A long time since we did this. The master arms are going on. BLs are going to be our Mark 82s. We're going to go RS just in case. I think we've got 8 instant, small amount spacing. I think that's otherwise set up. Okay, captain is blood orange Mirage. Woo! We're in pretend Mirage 3s, I guess, today. I guess that would be most historical. We have now INS waypoint at the port harbour entrance, and the you need CMD forward, by the way, RC, and the frigate is preparing with de Gaulle. Let's set the CCRP, designated, running in, full power. Watch this. Oh, bombs away. Oh, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt. Oh God! I think we've got him. Question mark. Something's on fire. Going round. I'm gonna get my guns out just to make absolutely sure. I think he's on fire. Let's go strafe him. Okay, de Gaulle. You're in for it, sir.
Yeah, I hit it dead on.
Nice. Run, corvettes, run. I've never seen such little cute guided missile corvette. He says, I don't think it's smoking, RC. I think it's actually the building behind him. I think I went slightly long. I'm going to have to give him some 30 Mike Deffer.
I hit him right in his hull.
I'm going to strafe his bridge anyway, so he ain't going to survive Deffer. I'm going to remember how to use this snare to ground, which I can't, but you know what? We'll just figure it out. Lovely bit of cloud up here in Normandy. Here we go, going down the longitudinal axis. To make absolutely sure. Run, little corvettes. Absolutely sure de Gaulle doesn't get away. Crashed into him. Right. Okay, well it turns out I think we missed with our bombs and we managed to blow some of Cherbourg's harbour up, which was a bit unfortunate. But we did, however, get bucket loads of Deffer all over the bridge section, and we would have completely ruined all that radar antenna. So to be honest, I think that frigate is grounded. Plus, these corvettes I think were 40 knot flank capable. And this was, what, 30, 32 knot for a frigate or something? So they never would have caught up anyway, I don't think. Anything to add to that piece of history, RC?
Nope.
I've enjoyed that. See you later.